It's always best if you can start out any inquiry by establishing some kind of personal connection. And that's how I began this inquiry. I was thinking about the veterans in my own life that I know. And they include my father, 2 uncles, a nephew who served in Iraq, and all the way back to Great Uncle Tony. Now, all my life growing up, I heard about Great Uncle Tony. Uncle Tony was what I heard, that he had served in World War I in France, and he died there. And he died in 1918. So my father, who was born in 1920, never met him, but he was named after him. His middle name was Anton. So I thought about that as a personal connection, and I realized that that matched up perfectly with Leslie Maniotis's research. She's a Colorado person who's written a book called Guided Inquiry, and she talks about third space in teaching. Third space is where curriculum and personal interests meet. So if you can picture a Venn diagram, you've got your curricular needs, your personal interests, and where those meet is really the most powerful learning. That is where the most powerful learning occurs. So I started with Uncle Tony, and I thought, I don't know much about him. But if you look at the screen for the ARS, I'm going to scroll down to the first blank on the left. And that is Anton C. Bastian, listed there because he is my great Uncle Tony. And as you scroll down, you can see that I have done a contextual paragraph to explain some of that personal link. I found in a genealogy book that my mother had prepared in 1976 an account of Uncle Tony's funeral. If you go down following the left column, you can see a photograph of my great Uncle Tony. But because I needed more space in this ARS, I added more images instead of links, because these are just images that I had in my personal possession that were scanned, and I saved them to this. I added those images farther down in the ARS in the Notes and Comments field. So I'm going to scroll down to the Notes and Comments field. I have to go through a couple of screens first. And this is a picture of my Uncle Tony, probably taken when he was in his 20s. He enlisted in the Army in 1917. He had gone to South Dakota from his home state of Nebraska, Wayne County, Nebraska, and he had gone to South Dakota to homestead. So there's Bastian family that had homesteads in South Dakota. He enlisted in his mid-20s, and he is the man pictured in this image on the far right. And this is in his training, the Fighting Fourth, from Mobridge, South Dakota. I also found in some family albums a photograph of his casket. He was killed on September 3rd, 1918. The armistice was signed November 11th, 1918, so it was about 3 months before the armistice was signed. His casket and body was not returned to Nebraska for burial until 1920, so I think there's a story in there that I haven't followed up on. And I'm going to move on down one more screen to the account that my mother in 1976 prepared, and she had copied from the obituary account that was written in the Wayne County, Nebraska newspaper. I had some fun with this because I had this account, but I really would like to see the original newspaper account. So I called the Wayne County, Nebraska Public Library, and they are, I hope, right now doing a search for me on their microfilm to try to find the exact newspaper account. So I'm hoping for good news about that soon. In this account, it was written that Uncle Tony's commanding officer, who was very stern with his men, wept when he was told that Tony had died. He had died by a shrapnel wound through the heart when he was supposed to be coming out of the trenches and be relieved at about midnight on September 3rd. So these are all really, really personal connections, and I realized that Uncle Tony was never a veteran, But I think that the veterans who die in our foreign wars are very much a part of that veteran experience, and I needed a personal connection.